There is a moment most people never think about. You open your front door, you smile, you say come in, and just like that, whatever that person is carrying walks into your home with them. Their peace, their chaos, their unresolved anger, their hidden bitterness, their habit of pulling people down without ever realizing they're doing it. You did not invite any of that, but came in anyway because you opened the door. The Bible has always understood something that modern culture is only beginning to rediscover. Your home is not just a building. It is a spiritual environment. What happens inside it? Who sits at your table? Who sleeps under your roof? Who speaks freely in your living room? All of it shapes the atmosphere of that space over time. And Scripture is remarkably direct about the kinds of people whose presence, however unintentionally, can corrupt the peace God worked hard to build in your life. Today we're going to walk through 7 types of people the Bible warns us to guard our homes against. Not because we are called to be cold or suspicious or unwelcoming. Scripture is equally clear that hospitality is sacred, that some people have welcomed angels into their homes without ever knowing it. But here is what that same Scripture does not say. It does not say to open every door to every person without wisdom. Discernment and hospitality are not opposites. Discernment is what makes hospitality sustainable. By the end of this video, you will know exactly which of these 7 types may already have a standing invitation in your home, and what to do about it. The first person you need to reconsider letting freely into your home is the chronic gossip. Proverbs 20 verse 19 says it plainly. A gossip betrays a confidence, so avoid anyone who talks too much. Not someone who occasionally shares too much. We have all done that, but the person for whom every conversation is an exchange of information about someone who is not in the room. Here is what most people miss about the gossip. When they sit in your home and tell you everything about everyone else, they're also somewhere else, sitting in someone else's home, telling everyone everything about you. Every secret that has ever left your lips in their presence is already somewhere you did not intend it to go. The gossip does not just disrupt other people's lives. They disrupt the atmosphere of every home they enter, leaving behind a residue of distrust, broken confidences, and quiet suspicion. Proverbs 16 verse 28 calls gossip a divisive force. It separates close friends. Do not let division set up residence under your roof.
The second type is the unrepentant believer.
When do I die?
The person who carries the language of faith, but has made a quiet peace with behavior that contradicts it. Paul addresses this directly in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, and his instruction is striking enough that most people skip past it. He says, do not associate with anyone who calls himself a brother or sister but continues in immorality, greed, or slander. Do not even eat with such a person. He is not talking about people outside the church who are still finding their way. He is talking about people inside it who have decided certain sins are acceptable for them. Paul understood something important. The danger is not always what comes from outside faith. Sometimes it is what sits comfortably inside it, smiling, speaking the right language, and slowly making compromise feel normal. When that person has repeated access to your home, their version of faith, the negotiated, comfortable version, becomes a voice in your space. The third person is the one who has fully embraced the identity of the victim.
It is always the same thing. No one ever listens to me. I can't take this anymore.
Every visit is a new episode of everything that has gone wrong, every person who has failed them, every system that has conspired against their peace. Proverbs 24 verses 1 and 2 warns against desiring the company of those whose hearts continually plot trouble and whose lips talk about making it. This is not about compassion for people who are genuinely suffering. Suffering is real, and we are called to sit with people in their pain. This is about the person who has built a permanent residence in their suffering and uses every conversation to pull others into it. Prolonged exposure to chronic negativity is not neutral. It slowly recalibrates what you believe is possible, what you expect from life, and what you are willing to accept in your own walk with God. You cannot spend every Sunday afternoon with someone who is convinced that nothing ever works and leave your faith completely undisturbed. Now here is where it gets uncomfortable, because the fourth type of person the Bible warns about may already be in your life, and you may have been calling their presence loyalty. The person driven by unresolved anger. Proverbs 22 verses 24 and 25 is unusually direct. Do not make friends with a hot-tempered person. Do not associate with one easily angered, or you may learn their ways and get yourself ensnared. Notice what the verse does not say. It does not say the angry person will hurt you. It says you will learn their ways. Anger is one of the most transferable spiritual conditions that exists. Spend enough time with someone who is always one small disappointment away from an explosion, and you'll begin to notice the same fuse getting shorter in yourself. You will begin to interpret situations the way they do. You will begin to react in ways that surprise even you. And you will trace it back, if you are honest, to who has been sitting in your home.
The fifth person is the flatterer, the one who always says exactly what you want to hear, whose praise feels like oxygen, and whose visits always seem to leave you feeling inflated in ways that somehow also leave you feeling slightly off. Proverbs 29 verse 5 warns that a person who flatters their neighbor spreads a net for their feet. Flattery is not the same as encouragement. Encouragement points you toward truth and growth. Flattery points you toward the flatterer. It creates a dependency, a craving for their approval. And that craving, once established in your home, gives that person an influence over your decisions that they did not earn and that you did not intend to give. Scripture also warns repeatedly about wolves in sheep's clothing, about people who present as spiritually aligned and supportive, but whose actual purpose is self-serving. Not every person who tells you are amazing is a friend. Some of them are architects of access. The sixth type is the mocker of faith, and this one is personal because the mockery is rarely loud. It is rarely someone who sits in your living room and announces that they think your relationship with God is foolish. It is subtler. It is the comment that makes you feel slightly embarrassed about how seriously you take your faith. It is the eye roll when you say you're going to pray about something. It is the joke that lands just close enough to the line to be deniable. Psalm 1 verse 1 opens with a progression that is easy to miss. Blessed is the one who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of mockers. Notice how sitting is the final stage. It begins with a walk, then a pause, then a seat. When someone who mocks your faith has a regular seat in your home, you have arrived at the third stage of that progression. The fire next to you always affects the temperature around you. Proverbs 6 verse 27 asks, "Can anyone walk on hot coals without scorching their feet?"
The seventh person is perhaps the most difficult to identify because they do not announce themselves with obvious red flags. This is the person who carries something unresolved into every room they enter, a bitterness they have never named, a wound they have never brought to God, a darkness that manifests as a subtle heaviness that follows them from house to house. You cannot always describe what it is. You only know that after they leave, something in the room feels different. The children are irritable. The conversation between you and your partner is shorter. The peace that was there before they arrived takes a few hours to return. Proverbs 22 verse 24 connects association with spiritual identification. You become tied to what you repeatedly open yourself to. This is not superstition. This is the same principle the Bible applies to everything from the food you eat to the thoughts you entertain. Spiritual environments are shaped by repeated exposure. Your home is a spiritual environment. So, what do you do with all of this? Because there is a version of this conversation that ends in suspicion, in building walls, in treating every relationship like a threat assessment. That is not what Scripture is calling you to. Hebrews 13 verse 2 still stands. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so some people have welcomed angels without knowing it. The goal is not a closed door. The goal is a wise door. Abraham sat at the entrance of his tent in the heat of the day and welcomed 3 strangers who turned out to be messengers of God. He was hospitable and discerning at the same time. The two are not in conflict. What the Bible is asking you to do is to take your front door as seriously as you take your heart. Proverbs 4 verse 23 says to guard your heart above all else, because everything you do flows from it. Your home is an extension of your heart. It holds your family, your peace, your private conversations, your children's ears, your most vulnerable moments. Not every person who smiles at your door deserves that level of access. Not every invitation you issued in a moment of warmth was wisdom. And some of the heaviness you have been carrying in your home has a name and a schedule and a habit of stopping by unannounced. Take one honest look at who has a standing invitation in your space. Ask yourself, simply and without guilt, whether their presence consistently leaves your home in a better spiritual condition than it was before they arrived. That is not a complicated question. And if you already know the answer, then you already know what step comes next.